Book of Heaven, Volume 14, Part 12. October 30th, 1922. The Prodigies of the Creature Operating in the Divine Will. Continuing in my usual state, my always adorable Jesus came, and plunging me into the immense light of his most holy will, he told me, "My daughter, look at the prodigies of the creature operating in my will. As she enters into my will and thinks, prays, operates, she rises with me. And since I am voice without word, and therefore my voice is formed and reaches each heart according to its own needs, and in many different languages and ways that are in the creatures, in such a way that all can comprehend me. And I am work without hands, and therefore I am work of each one. I am step without feet, in such a way that wherever I go, I find myself in act. In the same way, the soul, by operating in my will, becomes voice without word, work without hands, step without feet, and I feel her flowing in my voice, in my works, and in my steps. I feel her everywhere, and feeling her always together with me, I no longer feel lonely. And since I love so much the company of the creature, taken by love for her, I divinize her, I enrich her, and I give her such graces as to astonish heaven and earth." November 6, 1922. The Little Lambs of the Heart of Jesus. The will of God crystallizes the soul. Knowledge of the palace of the divine will. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus made himself seen, holding many little lambs in his arms, some leaning on his breast, some on his shoulders, some clinging to his neck, some on the right, some on the left of his arms, and some with their little heads peeping out from within his heart. However, the feet of all these little lambs were all inside the heart of our Lord, and the nourishment he gave to them was his own breath. They were all turned with their mouths toward the mouth of my sweet Jesus to receive the nourishment of his breath. It was really beautiful to see how Jesus took greatest delight, all intent on nourishing them and delighting with them. They really seemed many births come out of his most holy heart. Then turning to me, he told me, "My daughter, these little lambs that you see in my arms are the children of my will, legitimate birds from my supreme volition. They shall come out from within my heart, but shall keep their feet in the center of my heart, so that they may take nothing from the earth, and may concern themselves with nothing but me alone. Look at them. How beautiful they are, how clean and well fed. They grow nourished by my breath alone. They shall be the glory, the crown of my creation." Then he added, "My will crystallizes the soul, and just as when any object is placed close to a crystal, another object is formed within it, fully similar to the one that is placed in front of it. In the same way, my will reflects everything it does in these souls, crystallized by my power, and they repeat and do what my supreme will does. And since my will is present everywhere, in heaven, on earth, and in every place, these souls, containing my will within them as their own life, wherever my will acts, like crystal, they absorb it into themselves, and they repeat my act. So as I act, I take greatest delight in placing myself in front of them, to see my own action being repeated in them. They are my mirrors, and my will multiplies them for each act it does, and everywhere. Therefore there is not one created thing in which they are not present, in the creatures, in the sea, in the sun, in the stars, and even in the empyreum. And my will receives from the creature the requital of my act in a divine manner. This is also the reason why I love so much that the living in my will be known, to multiply more of these mirrors, rendered as crystals by my will, so as to have my works repeated in them. Then shall I not be alone any more, but I shall have the creature in my company. I shall have her with me, intimately with me, in the depth of my will, almost inseparable from me, as if she had just come out of my womb when I created her, having followed no other ways contrary to my will. How happy I shall be! On hearing this, I said to him, "My love and my life, I still cannot convince myself. How is it possible that no saint has done your most holy will always, and has lived in the way you are now saying, in your volition?" And Jesus, "Ah, my daughter, you still do not want to convince yourself that one can take as much light, grace, variety, value, for as much as one knows? Surely there have been saints who have always done my will, but they took of my will as much as they knew. They knew that doing my will was the greatest act, that which honored me the most, and that brought sanctification, and with this intention they did it. And this is what they took, because there is no sanctity without my will, and no good nor sanctity, whether small or great, can come out without it. You must know that what my will was, it is and shall be. It has not changed in anything, but in so far as it manifests itself, so does it make known the variety of its colors, of the effects and values it contains. And not only does it make itself known, but it gives to the soul the variety of its colors, effects, and values. Otherwise, why make them known? My will acted like a great lord who has displayed his most extensive and sumptuous palace. To the first ones he pointed out the way to reach his palace, to the second, the door, to the third, the stairs, to the fourth, the first rooms, and to the last ones he opened all the rooms, making them the owners, and giving them all the goods that are in it. Now the first ones have taken the goods that are on the way, the second, the goods that are at the door, superior to those that are on the way, the third, those of the stairs, the fourth, those of the first rooms, where there are more goods, and they are kept more safely. The last ones, the goods of the entire palace. So my will has done. It had to make known the way, the door, the stairs, the first rooms, to be able to move on into the whole immensity of my will, and to show them the great goods that are in it, and how the creature operating in these goods that my will contains acquires the variety of its colors, of its immensity, sanctity, and power, and of all my operating. In making something known, I give and impress in the soul that divine quality that I make known. If you knew under what mighty waves of graces you are, when I move on to make you know other effects of my will, and how, like a skillful painter, I portray in your soul, with the most vivid colors, the effects, the different values that I make you know, you would remain crushed under my waves. But compassionating your weakness, I sustain you. And while I sustain you, I impress more within you that which I tell you, because if I speak, I act. Therefore, be attentive and faithful. November 8th, 1922. Peace without God is impossible. Threats of wars. I am going through bitter days because of the privations of my sweet Jesus. And if he makes himself seen, he is so afflicted and taciturn that as much as I may say, I cannot manage to console him, and I remain more embittered than before. Then this morning on coming, he said to me, "My daughter, the pains, the offenses that creatures give me are so many that I cannot take any more. The nations are banding together to enter the field with new wars. Did I not tell you that the wars have not ended, and that the peace was a false and apparent peace, because peace without God is impossible? It was a peace that did not spring from justice, therefore it could not last. Ah, the leaders of these times are true incarnate devils, who band together to do evil, and cast confusion, slaughters, and wars among the peoples." And while he was saying this, I could hear the crying of mothers, the thundering of cannons, the alarms in all the cities. But I hope that Jesus shall placate himself, so they shall all remain in peace. November 11th, 1922. Jesus gave life in the divine will to the acts of all creatures. He associated his most holy mother with this work, and now he is calling the soul to repeat it. My always lovable Jesus, on coming, drew me so very close to himself, within an immense light, and told me, "Little daughter of my will, this immense light that you see is my supreme will, from which nothing escapes. You must know that as I created the heavens, the sun, the stars, and so forth, for all I fixed the limits, the place, the number, and they can neither increase nor decrease. I hold all things as though in the palm of my hand. In the same way, in creating man, at the same time I created all the intelligences and each thought, all the words, the work, the steps, and all the rest of man, from the first to the last who shall exist. And this was as though natural in me, more so, since I myself was to be actor and spectator of even one thought. Since man would not be able to do it without me, how could I not know it, and know also their number? Therefore, all the operating of creatures swims inside my will, like the fish swim inside a vast sea. However, having created man, not a slave, but free, because it would not have been decorous for me, nor a work worthy to come out of my hands, had I delivered this man hampered, without freedom. Nor could I have said, "Let us make him in our image and likeness," had I not made him free. I wanted to endow him with freedom. I was free. Free was he also to be. Besides, there is nothing that tortures a person more than to give a forced love. That causes diffidences, suspicions, fears, and almost reluctance in the one who receives it. Do you see where each active creature, even one thought, has its origin? In the sanctity of my will, with this difference, that if man wants, he can do that same thought, word, and so forth, well or badly. He can make it holy or evil. Now my will grieved in seeing the acts of many, of which it was the actor, changed into deadly acts for me and for them. Therefore I wanted for my will to make itself double actor of each act, and lay another divine act over all, that was to repay me with as many other divine acts, according to the sanctity of my will. However, someone was needed in order to do this. And here is my humanity, holy and free as well, that wanting no other life than the divine will alone, swimming in this immense sea, went on doubling each thought, word, and work of creature, and laid an act of divine will over everything. This satisfied and glorified the Divine Father in such a way that he was able to look at man and open the doors of heaven to him. And I retied the human will with more strength, leaving it always free not to detach from the will of its Creator, since detaching from it had made it fall into so many misfortunes. But I was not content with this. I wanted my mamma, holy as well, to follow me in the immense sea of the supreme volition, and to duplicate all human acts together with me, placing the double seal, after my own, of the acts done in my will upon all the acts of creatures. How sweet for me was the company of my inseparable mamma in my will! Company in operating makes happiness, delight, love of tenderness, competition, accord, and heroism arise. Isolation produces the opposite. Therefore, as I operated together with my dear mamma, seas of happiness, of delight on both sides, and seas of love arose, that competing with each other, dived into each other and produced great heroism. These seas arose not only for ourselves, but also for those who would keep us company in our will. Even more, I could say that these seas turned into many voices that called man to live in our will, so as to give back to him the happiness, his original nature, and all the goods he had lost by withdrawing from our will. Now I come to you. After my celestial mamma, I called you, so that all human acts may have the first seal done by me, the second done by my mamma, and the third by one creature of common stock. My eternal love would not be content if I did not raise one of common stock, who would open the doors for those who would dispose themselves to enter through these doors in order to live in our will. This is the reason for my many manifestations, the many values and effects that I made known to you about my will. These shall be powerful magnets to draw you, and then others, to live in it. However, in order to enter into our will and follow the sublime flights of my acts and of those of my inseparable mamma, as much as you are of common stock, you could not enter into our will if you did not have, or had at least been transformed into, the nature which came out of my hands before man withdrew from our will. Here, then, my many graces, in order to restore your nature, your soul, to that original state. As I engraced you, so I removed from you the seeds, the tendencies, the passions of the rebellious nature, always leaving your will free. Having to call you into the center of my will, to live a communal life in it, to make you cover all the acts done by me, which are not yet known by creatures, it was necessary to restore your nature to this happy state, for my decorum, sanctity, and dignity. Otherwise you could not have run with me in the interminable acts of my will, nor be with me with that ease that is needed in order to operate together. The passions, the seeds of tendencies that are not good, would have been like many bars of division between you and me. At the most you would have been at the commands of my will, like many other faithful ones of mine, but you would have been very far from doing what I did, and neither you nor I would have been happy. While living in my will is precisely this: to live fully happy on earth, to then move on to live more happy in heaven. Therefore I tell you, true daughter of my volition, first happy birth from my will, be attentive and faithful to me. Come into my eternal volition. My acts await you, wanting the seal of yours. Those of my mamma await you. The whole of heaven awaits you, wanting to see all of their acts glorified in my will by a creature of their own stock. The present and future generations await you, to be given back the lost happiness. Ah, no, no, the generations shall not end until man returns into my womb, beautiful, dominating, just as he came out of my creative hands. I am not content with having redeemed him. Even at the cost of waiting, I shall still have patience, but he must return to me as I made him, by virtue of my will. By doing his own will, he descended into the abyss and transformed himself into a brute. By doing my will, he shall ascend and acquire the new transformation into the nature created by me. Then shall I be able to say, I have accomplished everything. The order of the whole creation has returned to me, and I shall rest in it. November 16th, 1922. The divine will now operates, and now preserves what it has operated. Now it wants to operate again, as it did in creation and redemption. Effects of the absolution in the divine will. As I was in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus, on coming, drew me all into his most holy will, and I, as though having the whole work of creation under my eyes, followed everything that my sweet Jesus had done for the creatures. Then, after we followed it together, he told me, "My daughter, my will acts in different ways. Now it operates, and now it preserves what it has operated. In creation I operated, and I ordered everything, and after I did everything, my will has been the preserver of everything. From that time onward, it has done nothing new in the order of all creation. Then, again, my will entered the field to operate, in descending from heaven to earth, in order to redeem man. And my work was not for a little while as in creation, but it lasted as long as 33 years. And again I returned to preserve everything I operated in redemption. So just as a son exists by virtue of my preserving will, for the good of all and of each one, so are the goods of redemption in act for all and for each one. Now, my will wants to go back to work. And do you know what it wants to do? It wants to operate in the creature, that which my will operated in my humanity. This shall be an extremely long work of mine, more than redemption. And just as, in order to operate redemption, I formed a mother for myself, in whom I conceived my humanity, so now I have chosen you, in order to operate what my will operated in my humanity. See then, my daughter, this is about works, and works of my supreme volition. You shall be like the space that offered itself to let me create and place in order the sun, the stars, the moon, the air, and all the beauty that exists in the vault of the heavens, and all the good that descends from heaven. You shall be like my humanity, which in nothing opposed what my will wanted to operate, and I shall enclose in you what the supreme volition did in me, so as to have its repetition. Then afterwards I was receiving absolution, and I said within myself, "My Jesus, I want to receive it in your will." And Jesus immediately, without giving me time, added, "And I absolve you in my will, and as I absolve you, my volition puts the words of absolution on the way, to absolve whomever wants to be absolved, and to forgive whomever wants forgiveness. My will takes all, not just one alone, but those who are disposed take more than anyone." November 20th, 1922. Currents of love between God and man. I was thinking of how my sweet Jesus, when he was in the garden, suffered many pains, but not on the part of creatures, since he was alone, or rather abandoned by all, but on the part of his eternal Father. There were currents of love between him and the celestial Father, and all creatures were placed in these currents, in which there was all the love of a God for each one of them, and all the love that each of them owed God. And since this was missing, he arrived at suffering such pains as to surpass all other pains, to the point of sweating living blood. And my sweet Jesus, pressing me to his heart to be relieved, told me, "My daughter, the pains of love are the most excruciating. See, in these currents of love between me and my Father, there is all the love that all creatures owed me, and therefore there is betrayed love, denied love, rejected love, unknown love, trampled love, and so forth. Oh, how piercingly it reaches my heart, to the point that I feel myself dying. You must know that in creating man I fixed many currents of love between me and him. Having created him was not enough for me. No, I was to place so many currents of love between me and him that there was to be not one part of him in which these currents would not flow. So, in the intelligence of man ran the current of love of my wisdom. In his eyes ran the current of love of my light. In his mouth, the current of love of my word. In his hands, the current of love of the sanctity of my works. In his will, the current of love of mine. And so with all the rest. Man had been made to be in continuous communications with his Creator. And how could he be in communication with me if my currents would not run in his? With sin he broke all these currents and remained separated from me. Do you know how this happened? Look at the sun. All of its light hits the surface of the earth and invests it so much as to make it feel its heat, so alive and real as to bring fecundity and life to everything that the earth produces. So it can be said that the sun and the earth are in communication with each other. Oh, how much tighter are the communications between man and myself, true eternal Son. Now, if a creature could have the power to break, between the earth and the sun, the current of light that hits the surface of the earth, what harm would he not do? The sun would withdraw all the current of light into itself. The earth would remain in the dark, without fecundity and without life. What penalty would he not deserve? Man did all this in creation, and I descended from heaven to earth in order to reunite again all these currents of love. But oh, how much it cost me. And man continues with his ingratitude, and returns to break the currents repaired by me. November 24th, 1922. Jesus before Herod. Effects of the Word and of the gaze of Jesus. Jesus reprimands her because she wants to keep these truths hidden. I was thinking of when my sweet Jesus was presented to Herod, and I said to myself, how is it possible that Jesus, who is so good, did not deign to say a word to him, or to give him a glance? Who knows whether that perfidious heart would have converted at the power of his gaze? And Jesus, making himself seen, told me, my daughter, his perversity and the lack of interior disposition were such that he did not deserve that I look at him or say a word to him. And if I had done it, he would have rendered himself more guilty, because each word or gaze of mine are additional bonds that are formed between me and the creature. Each word is a greater union, one more closeness, and as the soul feels looked upon, grace begins its crafting. If the gaze or the word was sweet and benign, she says, how beautiful, penetrating, gentle, melodious it was. How not to love him? If then it was a majestic gaze or word, blazing with light, she says, what majesty, what greatness, what penetrating light! How small I feel, how miserable I am, how much darkness in me before that light so blazing. If I wanted to tell you of the power, the grace, the good that my word or gaze brings, how many books would I make you write? See then how many goods I have done to you in looking at you so many times, in keeping you with me in intimate conversations. They have not been just words, but complete discourses. From this you can comprehend that the unions between you and me, the relations, the bonds, the closenesses, are innumerable. I acted with you like a teacher who says only a few words to the others who want some direction from him, but spends the entire day with his own disciples, wanting to make of them as many teachers similar to himself. He speaks at length. He is always over them. And now he develops one topic. Now he gives a simile to make himself comprehended more. Nor does he ever leave them alone, for fear that, getting distracted, they may waste his efforts. And if needed, he subtracts hours from his own rest in order to instruct them. He spares nothing, neither toils, nor strains, nor sweat, in order to obtain the intent that his disciples become teachers. So I have done for you. I have spared nothing. With others I had only words. With you, discourses, long teachings, similes, at night, during the day, at all hours. How many graces have I not given you? How much love, to the point of not being able to be without you? Great is the design I have made upon you, therefore much I have given you. You, then, in all gratitude, would want to keep what I have told and given you hidden within yourself, and therefore deny me the glory I would receive by manifesting it? What would you say of that disciple who, after his teacher has reached the point of making of him a teacher through many toils, would want to keep for himself the education he has received, without imparting it to others? Would he not be ungrateful, and the cause of sorrow for his teacher? What would you say of the sun, if after I gave it so much light and heat, it would not want to let this light and heat descend upon the earth? Would you not say to the sun, it is true that you make a good impression, but it is not good that you keep it for yourself. The earth, the plants, the generations await your light and your heat. They want them in order to receive life and fecundity. Why do you want to deprive us of such a great good? More so, since in giving them to us, you lose nothing. Rather, you acquire more glory, and everyone shall bless you. Such are you, and even more than sun. I have placed in you so much light of truth about my will, that more than sun, it would be enough to illuminate all, and to do more good than the sun itself does to the earth. I myself, and the generations, await that this light be unleashed from you, while you think of how to hide it, and you almost afflict yourself if authoritative people want to occupy themselves with putting it out. No, no, this is not good. I felt myself dying in hearing my sweet Jesus, and I felt even more guilty, because during these days, since one of my writings had been withdrawn without achieving the purpose for which it had been released, that is, to put it out, I had felt great satisfaction. Oh, how bad I felt in being reproached so severely, and wholeheartedly I asked for his forgiveness. And Jesus, to calm me down, blessed me, telling me, I forgive you, and I bless you, but you shall be more attentive, and shall not do it any more. Deo gratias. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 14. Fiat.